We're live.
Okay, call finance to order. I need a motion to accept the minutes of August 13th. Moved by John Rozelle, second by James Griffith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Okay, real property. There's Lord Chadwick.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I received a letter from GA Bovey Fuels. They are interested in purchasing a property that is both next door and across the road from property they currently own down on Derby Street. They would like to present an offer of $4,000 for them to purchase that property.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve that?
I'll make the motion so we can get started.
Okay, moved by Matt Hicks. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave O'Brien and Don Ward. Is there discussion? Matt
I
Hicks?
think this was vetted all through government apps, wasn't it, Dave?
Yes.
And it was, is it the appraised or the assessed value?
Total assessed value is $4,000 for that property.
And we were already in the chain of liability, so just getting rid of it puts it back on the tax roll, and we're still in the chain of liability, so it makes no odds. Okay, no more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, and we gotta write off some taxes, it looks like.
Yep, we have 1138, a property in the town of Salem. It was a mobile home and a mobile home park. The prior owners had exemptions, and since then the assessor has deleted the property from the assessment roll, and there were some current unpaid taxes on there. The owner that lived there prior is no longer there, so that mobile home is no longer entitled to the exemptions, which is why it was split off from the tax roll, and 8801 is what we call it. So.
Okay, this is resolution B in our packet.
Yes.
Okay, need a motion. Dave O'Brien, do I have a second? Don Ward, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Don't see.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, anything else?
Nope, that's all I have. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Laura. Okay, we're up with the treasurer. Good morning, Mr. Gillette.
Good morning, everyone. I tried to get you a packet in your emails this morning so you could play along at home. Hopefully you got them. The first page is the sales tax. The first deposit for September was in. It was down a little bit, which wasn't unexpected. So it puts us $478,000 down from this time last year. If this trend continues, we'll finish somewhere in the 20.9 to $21 million range is my best guess. So considering what some of our projections showed 3 months ago, it's not the worst news that I could ever deliver to you. So it may put us about 300,000 under budget, but considering we were looking at 1.5 to 3 million in early projections, like I said, that's, while I'd like to see black on the sheet, it doesn't break my heart that it's only down 3.5%. So.
Thank you.
Next sheet in the packet is the cash balances that I provide you to make sure that you understand where our cash position is. I'm going to skip past the budget to actual sheets, which are the next 4, because I gave you something a little different this month that I thought going into budget season may be a more useful tool. So what I gave you is some balance sheets that take a snapshot of August 31st of this year versus August 31st of last year to see year over year what's our financial picture look like. And I got to tell you, going through the numbers, I was pleasantly surprised. When you look at general fund, we're not really all that far off of where we were this time last year. You can see there's a significant drop in the liabilities. That drop is due to that $5 million deferred tax revenue adjustment from the dewatering facility. So, but cash is only down $100,000 from this time last year. So even with some of the holdbacks from the state, we're not in a terrible cash position. To be that close to last year at this time with the state holdbacks, that made me happy because, you know, again, cash flow becomes a concern regardless of what the revenues and expenses look like.
So Al, how is that possible with the holdbacks that's holding?
So connected to that $5 million decrease in liabilities was, you'll notice that due from other governments line in general fund went from 2.5 million down to 30,000. That's reflective of the school and the village paying back their chargebacks. So we got a bump,
Okay.
right? So we got a bump in cash between the village and the school and their paybacks. So that bump from the bump from the chargebacks is kind of offset the holdbacks at this point. So if some of that money starts flowing from the state, which some of the DSS money has started to flow, we'll be in an even better cash position. So that, again, that makes me happy.
So we can thank the whole board for sticking to their guns and making that happen, because if we hadn't pushed for that so hard last year, we would have been in an awful position right now.
Right. Some of the decisions you made last March and April definitely are paying off now.
Yep.
And when you go to, I guess what is page 3 of the balance sheet for general fund, you'll see that even revenue expense wise, last year, the difference between revs and expenses was 9.6. This year it's 9.5. So again, even with some of the struggles and some of the revenues trailing, we're not in a significantly different place than we were this time last year. Again, that's great news considering there's about $680,000 of that COVID money that wasn't planned for. So to still be this close to last year with that unexpected expense in there, and I think that Brian and Chris will be talking later on in the meeting, because I saw a resolution in the packet where they've gone through and looked at some of the general fund savings. You'll see how this is possible later in the meeting.
Well, also, Al, there's another number on top of this of what's being held back from the state that could have also been here that would have made that a lot better, right?
No, so I actually record the whole shot, Brian, even if there's a holdback.
Oh, even with the holdback, so that doesn't reflect the holdback then?
Right, because if like with DSS or like with mental health, if they free up some of that money,
Yep.
we've already got it on the books and it just becomes a cash issue at that point.
Very good. I like it that way.
Yep. And then moving on to carpool, it's the only other one I really want to spend not significant, but more than a few seconds on. Again, there's conversations about buying 2 cars this year instead of 0 that we talked about at Public Works. I really wanted to make sure that I gave you the carpool balance sheet as well to show that even after those purchases, my best projection for carpool at this point shows them finishing at about $690,000 even after the purchase of the 2 cars. So again, your decision to reinstate the $360,000 that was previously taken out of the fund shows that again was the right decision to make, because now carpool will finish this year in a place of strength, so you can have serious discussions about what 2021 looks like. So again, thank you for your commitment to that. And then I've done this for all of the funds. You'll be hearing more about County Road later in the meeting. One thing that I will put on your radar, looking at the numbers, whether it's the end of this year or the beginning of next year, I will be meeting with Chris and Brian to talk a little bit about County Road machinery, because we've done everything we can do right now to make carpool strong. There does seem to still be a problem with the County Road Machinery Fund. And that might be a factor of several decisions that brought us here. And it's not over the past year or 2, it's over the past 20 or 25. So there will be some discussions about decisions we've made and where do we go from here? Because County Road Machinery will be the next struggle in the special revenue funds that will have to be addressed by this board. And self-insurance, you'll hear more about self-insurance in the 2021 budget process. Again, that fund balance has gotten to a point where we have to stop taking from it and fund that fund a different way. you'll hear more about that in the upcoming budget meetings because again, you'll have to make some significant decisions on how you move forward, as well as with the self-insurance, health insurance fund. That fund luckily has better news than any other fund because we've kept our claims down. And as you recall, we're not self-insured, but we have a minimum premium product. So regardless of the premium we put into the fund, the expenses going out of it are claims driven. So with our claims holding pretty steady to low, coming in under pretty much 3, 4, 5 years in a row, that fund has actually grown to a very strong place where you now can make some significant decisions about the future of that fund as well. Whether it be you look at some new products, whether it be you get some rate stabilization, there's some legitimate conversations you'll be able to have because that fund is now extremely strong based on the claims staying pretty steady. That's as far as I have for my packet. The only other thing that I had for the board this morning, I'm sure many of you have seen the Post-Star article where Warren County announced that they will not be having their auction. Unfortunately, I have to break the same news to you at this point. We are unable, due to the governor's executive order, to get our foreclosure documents in front of the courts. They are still not able to hear that case. So with the judge not being able to sign that court document, we cannot move forward with our October 3rd auction. So we will be able to have an auction at some point. I just don't know when that will be. But I can tell you that it won't be on October 3rd. Until the governor's executive order expires, the judge won't even hear the case. So it may be pushed into spring of 2021. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that announcement out to you guys today because we've kind of waited to see what the governor was going to do. And right now, we're so close to the October 3rd date that even if I got a court date now, we'd never be able to pull it together. So that because all of those properties were noticed, we will be able to go to auction at some point when the courts open back up and are able to hear those foreclosure documents. But it won't be in October, and there's a 99% chance it won't be in 2020.
Al, with that being said, do they still have time to pay those taxes before you take possession of them?
Yes, sir. They will always have, as long as I have a say in the matter, they'll always have until the night before the auction.
Okay.
So if the auction's,
That was clear.
if the auction's next April, they'll have until next April. Mr. Hicks?
Yeah, in the scheme of years going forward, Al, if you were allowed to have it, say, next March or April, you would then have it. Would you have another one in October to catch up to get in the sequence better?
So the other part of my heartache that I'm having right now is that same executive order from the governor. If that precludes me from sending out my October 1st notice this year, that will also cancel next year's auction completely. So while this auction's a postponement, if I can't send out my notices in October, that's the actual first step of the foreclosure process. So if we can't send those notices out, there might not be a 2021 auction. We're still working.
Year,
pardon?
So this year, we won't have one, but we may recoup the lost revenue next year instead of getting it this year. So there's a potential that in any event, we could have to budget zero for revenue for next year.
You could kick this year's revenue.
That's zero.
You could kick this year's revenue into next year.
Yeah.
Right, and next year's revenue could be net zero though.
It could be because now you're going to have another whole year of taxes. So where you might have had it right now, somebody owes 3 years on a property, they're going to owe 4 years by the time they get to auction. So for the county purposes, your lien is going to be bigger. So if your sales prices don't grow and your lien grows, your surplus, if any, is going to diminish.
Yeah, you might not even come out ahead.
You might not have a surplus next year.
But at the same token, Al, there's still an opportunity yet that may be lifted to send those notices, right?
We're working with the governor's office right now to find out how that's going to work. And this is across the whole state. It's not just Washington County.
Right. Yep.
No, I guess my point is, if that's the situation at us right now, we might consider having to budget
All right.
net zero for
Yeah.
next year.
Or the year after. Because you're gonna have zero for this year.
No, I'm talking about 2021.
No, for this year you might have, but even if the sales next year, that would go in next year's budget. So next year you might not budget zero, but the year after you might have to budget zero. It's hard out. But we'll know more about that as it plays out in the next.
I would account next April's back to 2020. You're gonna put.
I don't think
you're
you
gonna put
can.
next year here. I get you. No.
I just don't think you can. But Dave O'Brien, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so that would have another impact because in a sense, we don't have one in 2021 for the current ones that should have been started this year on October 1st. In 2022, we may have double the properties, and that amount of properties may also dilute the available cash to buy those properties.
Wow.
Maybe.
What a guy.
And remember also for every tax cycle that goes by that we don't have an auction, we're making the village, school, and town whole along the way. So not only is the lien getting bigger, but we've made all the entities along the way whole. So it's a little bit of a burden on the county for sure. Yes, it keeps people in their homes longer, but I don't know that it's doing them any favors either, because now they got 5 years to pay instead of 3 in order to get their house saved. So I worry about whether it's even a benefit to the taxpayer.
Giselle, I hate to even ask you this, because I'm not sure if you can quantify it or not, but if we do not hold an auction, is there a way to estimate the savings and expenses by not having one between
So
your
the
office and
only-
Laura's office?
The only
Or are you gonna do the
expense,
work anyway?
well, so the only expense that you save is if I don't send that notice out. That notice costs me about $12,000.
Okay.
Wow.
It's got to be sent eventually, the long ways from one.
But it has to be done eventually.
But there's no way to quantify any savings by not having.
No, because all that work still has to happen.
That's my question, thank you.
Right. So we have to do everything as if there was going to be one.
Gotcha.
God bless us.
Did I see another hand? John?
Was there an income listed in this budget for the auction?
250,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna be lacking that. Okay,
And I know
Yeah,
that-
as we've started to look at our 2020 year-end projections, probably for the last 2 months now, that is a zero for this year. We're writing off that there will be no foreclosure tax sale revenue in the 2020 budget.
Yeah, Brian, Chris, and I have had a conversation about this being a possibility, so it is on Brian's radar already.
Dan Shaw?
Yeah, I want to switch to another tax, which is the mortgage tax that we passed and the governor signed that 1/4%. Is there, now when did that kick in?
April 1st.
And is there any data yet on that as far as, because that's supposed to offset the cost of the capital project at the
College.
college, right? How does the COVID epidemic impacted those numbers?
Should help, because the
Yeah,
price
but
of
do we have
property's
any,
up.
do we have any data on that?
So the best I can say at this point is I've looked at those numbers very carefully, and it's very clouded. The reason being that it didn't kick in until April 1st. When it kicked in, everything was shut down. There was nothing going on at all. Now, real estate is extremely active. There are a lot of transactions going on. However, the downside of that is there's literally so many transactions going on that the entire real estate transaction infrastructure is backed up. So activity that's been transpiring for the last month or two, you're not seeing closings until October, November, and December right now for transactions that are being done. So there's going to be a considerable lag of when that mortgage tax revenue hits our books. Right now, we're down considerably. Year end, I'm forecasting we're not going to hit budget. We're going to be several $100,000 under budget. But it's very difficult to know what those last few months of the year are really going to look like, because all the signs that I can see are that those last couple months of the year, maybe half of October, November, and December, are going to be very strong. I just don't know how strong. To be conservative, I'm forecasting we're gonna be a couple $100,000 under budget on mortgage tax revenue, but I remain pessimistically optimistic that it might be better than that.
So really, we didn't budget for the 1/4%, really, did we?
We did budget, and unfortunately, because of the snafu with tax and finance,
It didn't start in
we
January.
thought we were gonna have it in place January 1st. Tax and finance kind of pulled our chain a little bit. We didn't get it until April 1st, so that's part of that reason, where we're gonna be a little bit under what we thought we were gonna achieve.
The couple 100,000 under, is that with factoring in what we had budgeted for the 1/4%?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So between that and, the tax auction, we're $500,000 shortfall on the budget for revenue so far. What you
We
accepted?
could be.
Yeah, there's more than that. We're gonna talk about it in a little more detail later in the meeting, but,
Yeah, but I mean, just for those two.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
But yeah, that,
And just a
well, I was gonna
reminder,
say those first 4 months or first 3 months were the big killer because those months were probably pretty good. Go ahead, Al.
just a reminder, our new Airbnb agreement started September 1st, and I hope to have some numbers for you at next finance. So we'll see how that plays out, because that industry is doing very well right now.
No, I'm talking to tax. It goes back. Okay. You ready to go on to the next one then, Al?
What you got?
Accept payments of return village and school taxes is what's next on the agenda.
Okay, so every year there's 2 resolutions that go in front of the board that allows me to collect the villages and schools turn over to me by November 15th. These 2 resolutions allow me to collect for 2 more weeks up till December 1st. There are ones that you see every year, but it is a decision that you have to make. I mean, you can decide not to do it and just have them turn over November 15th to be done with it. I know that I won't speak for either one of them, but for Laura Chadwick and Debbie Prohoda, it probably wouldn't break their heart, because with me collecting to December 1st and having to wait for postmarks to come in, it really pushes them really tight up against their levy calculations. But it does give taxpayers 2 extra weeks to pay. So there's a plus and minus to doing it.
So this isn't part of the 2 resolutions on D and E. This is separate. Is that what you're saying?
This C.
No, C and E, we didn't do C.
Right, D and E. Okay, I just had it backwards. But
This is D&E.
this is D and E, but you added changing the dates, and I don't think, is that what?
So there's no change in the dates. You explained the dates to you.
Right.
They are what they are.
And you said you didn't want to move them or something because that would be against,
No, you have
What we
to
do.
specifically authorize them to do that
oh,
by
Right,
resolution.
If you don't authorize it, when they turn over to me, that's it. That's the end of collection.
and that's what you prefer.
I don't care either way. I think Laura Chadwick and Debbie Prohoda are more affected than I am.
Yeah. How about the board? Is there anybody on the board that wants to change the date? I mean, I don't really want to, but
The previous date's always been the 15th.
Well,
That's true.
we're not changing the dates. All these do is give me the authority to collect for 2 weeks.
Yeah, just.
What have we done in the past?
The way we've always done it is the villages and the schools turn it over to Al on the 15th. He collects for another 2 weeks until December 1st. Then we close it out. Those finalized collection numbers go into the levy calculation. In order to do that, like we've always done, you've got to adopt these 2 resolutions to authorize him to collect for those extra 2 weeks.
okay, the way you talked, it sounded like you were trying to do something different. That was what got me confused.
It's either collect for 2 weeks or don't. That's the only 2 options.
No, I think that's what worthwhile. Okay, so I need a motion for D and E. You want to pass both those, Dave?
Yeah.
Is there a second? Mr. Ward, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Now, interfund loan cap project number 128 is the last thing you've got?
Yep. Last month, when I drafted the resolution to create the new capital project for the small Marshall funds. I failed to remember that we have to front the money on Marshall, and the capital project will need an interfund loan because we have to pay the expenses first and then apply for the reimbursement. So in order to do that, we need to cash flow the project. So the creating resolution that I did last month did not include the interfund loan authorization. So this is me catching up with what I should have done last month.
And this is resolution F.
Is it a motion, Al, or an amendment to the previous motion? How
It's
do
a
you
motion.
want it?
It's its own resolution, sir.
I'll move it.
Moved by resolution F is moved by Jay Skelly. Is there a second? I got
Second.
James Griffith, Kathy Fedler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, is that it, Al?
As far as I know.
Okay, now we're on to budget amendments with the administrator.
Dan's got his hand up.
Yeah, I got a question, and I don't know if it's for Al or Chris, but I thought if he's still on the line, I wanted to ask it. There was an email that came out from Association of Counties, a state diversion of local sales tax collection calendar for next year. Is that fixed in stone? So that's actual numbers then? I didn't know if it was a possibility.
Oh, no, it's
So
real.
that means that they're taking out of our sales tax $519,000, and it won't increase. Well, $519,000, that's guaranteed to be taken out and not any more than that.
Oh, no.
No.
It can be more.
There's no guarantees.
Now, we had 200 and some taken out, or going to be taken out this year, if it's not all taken out, or part of the
Yeah.
program.
360.
It came in two different cases, though. One was the towns and one for the villages.
180 and 160 or something like that. Anyway, yeah, there was two different times currently that they take out money. One is for the AIM payment to the towns, one is for the AIM payment to the villages. What he did this year during the COVID crisis was he created a distressed hospitals fund. And he took another, was it 100 million?
50.
50 million out of all of the county sales tax. And what they did was they put everybody's sales tax together, said, okay, Washington County, your percentage of the whole sales tax pie is 0.15% or whatever it was. So then they take that percentage of our sales tax and give it to distressed hospitals. That total for us was $181,000. So, as of now, that's it. But again, they have another budget to pass April 1st of 2021. And now that he's learned he can steal our sales tax, he's doing it. So it's hard to say.
I'm in hopes he steals it for Hudson River, Black River.
You keep hoping. So that number.
You gotta be confident.
But the only thing we can guarantee is it won't be less.
Correct.
That's sad news. Very good. You got that?
Yep.
Never good news when the governor prints what he's taking from you. Okay, next, Chris.
All right, so, we're jumping around a little bit with resolutions. We're gonna go back to resolution C. in your packet. So as a reminder, this started a couple of years ago.
Cut it off.
We have
That is our
contractual
number. If you
agreements
look
with
at
the
it.
town of Fort Anne and the town of
That's what's
Cambridge
gonna be
to
taken
provide
out next year.
accepting services
And I
for
had
a
to
per
take
parcel
right out of our
fee.
budget.
We also have an agreement with the town of Argyle where we provide data collection services for a different per parcel fee.
Excuse me, but I can't hear Chris because I can hear Dan talking to the side. Could you repeat all of that? I'm sorry.
So, for the last couple of years, we have contractual agreements with several towns. With Fort Anne and the town of Cambridge, we provide assessing services for a per parcel fee. It's roughly $12 a parcel. For the town of Argyle, we have an agreement where we provide them data collecting services for a fee of, I believe, $3 a parcel. Those various agreements are coming up for renewal. What the resolution here does is authorize the chairman to sign extensions or renewals with those three municipalities which we already have arrangements with, and any new towns or village, if they should wish, to join us for assessing services. You'll notice notice there is not a dollar amount in here. I think we should have a conversation at government ops if we need to change our per parcel fee, multiple assessment services and/or data collecting services to make sure we continue to cover our costs. And at least what the real property director was telling me is there may be more towns that are interested in some version of these services from us. So, if the board were to approve this, we wouldn't be signing the contracts right now. I know the town of Cambridge contract expires at the end of the month, so we have a little bit of time. What I was hoping to do is get the approval in place for the chairman, and then it says in here that it's for a rate that will be negotiated and approved by both the county and the participating municipalities. So we can talk about it more in committee, make sure everybody's comfortable with it, and then get the contracts renewed before they expire.
Okay, I have a question about that.
Go ahead.
I already asked Laura and she told me the rates were the same because you can't, I need to know what rates are going to be in order to do my budget. So I'd rather you made the decision sooner than later because that was the first word I got was the values were going to be the same. If we're going to be changing it, I really need to know sooner than later for my budget. I'm sure Fort Ann needs to know too.
Mhm.
Agreed. I think when we entered into this agreement, the direction, at least that I received from the board, was that we were to provide this service at no cost to the county. So I need to make sure that our rates are covering what our costs are. And as you would expect in a normal annual budget cycle, there are increases to our costs going into next year, so I need to do those calculations. I can have the numbers finalized by next Friday if that's in enough time, but I thought we may need the opportunity to discuss it in committee on the 22nd.
Okay, well, that's fine. It was just, I reached out to see if there was any increases in as far as working on my budget. I guess I just need to know. I planned on turning my budget over this week, but I guess I'll wait. No problem.
Right.
Let me know as
Okay.
soon as you can, because it does have an impact.
No, understood.
I have just a procedural question. I want to make sure we don't get the chairman in trouble that he's signing something for his own town, but because we're giving him permission, that's fine, right? It's good, it's good.
My question.
I want to make sure we're right here. Okay. Moved by Dave O'Brien, second by Lester Losaw and Dan Shaw, or did you have a question?
Question.
Okay.
I'm not that committee. Chris, does this help the town, and you can't say guaranteed, but to maintain 100%, once you get to 100%, like this possible reval that we're all waiting for the grant approval on. Once we get to 100% by entering into these services, is that almost like a guarantee that we're gonna stay at 100% because they're doing the work that needs to be done to keep it 100%?
I think that's one component of the.
That's an opportunity of it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one component of it. The other.
So that's an advantage, so I'm saying, to consider doing it.
Yep, I do think that is one of the advantages, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If I can weigh in on that, my town was maintained at 100% with my own assessor, but in the spirit of consolidated and shared services, we made the move to go to the county. But you can maintain 100% with your own assessor.
Yep. That's true. That's right.
Yeah, I think that the point about the 100% from our standpoint, is exactly the point, because we're using them for data collection. And that's one of the biggest keys, right? These local assessors are trying to get the data collection done so they can keep it at 100% and document that you're there. So from our standpoint, that's very much the service, and we're actually asking for a little bit different service than the rest of you. We're just doing data collection.
So is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, thank you.
You want to go back to A now, Chris?
We already did A, B,
We did do,
D, E, and F, so we are on to G.
oh, come on, I didn't think we did A.
Maybe the first thing we did, we didn't talk about the resolution.
I was gonna say, we didn't talk about it being Hudson Falls. We only talked about Salem, I thought.
No, we talked about the oil company and
across on Derby Street.
Oh, that's Bovee. I was thinking the write-off. Okay.
Okay,
We
so
didn't give them the letter.
resolution G is a amendment to the sewer district budget for the purchase of new office phones, as well as some, diesel fuel. And taking money from an auto fuel line, in sewers into O&M and compost and appropriating $600 in fund balance for the phones.
Second? Mr. Lozow, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
H comes out of, government ops. It's an amendment of $11,850 to the capital project for the Burgoyne Avenue roof engineering. And this is specifically to engineer the removal of the hazardous waste that was identified via the hazardous waste study that we did do.
There's a second. Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Lester Lozow. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, resolution I is, to amend capital project number 81, which references County Route 10, which I lovingly refer to as the Burrito Bridge. This is a joint project with Vermont DOT. There was an amendment to the Schedule A in the amount of $120,000, and this is 80% federal, 20% state with no local match.
Move it.
Moved by
Second.
Jay,
Second.
Second.
second by Cassie and Dave. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution J is to recognize, federal EMPG grant funds that were awarded to public safety. So the total of $28,272, $10,798 will be spent on equipment, standby generator, a generator and a pump, or pumps. And, the other is for some software and, document type stuff. And this is federal money, so this just, recognizes the revenue and makes the corresponding appropriation.
So moved.
Moved by Dave O'Brien, anybody have a second? Lester Lozow, any discussion? Dan Shaw?
Did I hear you say a generator and a pump?
I think it's multiple generators and multiple pumps. I don't have the actual breakdown, but when I spoke to Tim this morning, that was what he told me.
And is this for to distribute during emergency times?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
deploy and distribute.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, K is amending the non-union title by grade schedule to move the electronic technician position from a grade 13 to a grade 14. This was discussed at the IT committee and the personnel committee. It's about $1, it's $1 an hour and 1 cent, increase.
Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. James Griffith, Don Ward, Sue Clary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution L is a, retroactive change to the title by grade schedule for the SPOs, which is the Special Patrol Officers operating in schools. We entered into contracts with the 6 participating schools. 2 of those rates changed from last year. As a reminder, we charge the school not only the hourly rate, but the fringe benefits associated with those positions. So this just changes the title by grade schedule so that the treasurer can pay, those SEOs appropriately based on the contractual rates we're paid by the school.
Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Lester Lozow, Dan Shaw, Don Ward. Any discussion? Dan Shaw, oh, you have a discussion, that's right.
I'm sorry, is this, do we pay out and then the school reimburses us?
Yeah, so we bill them monthly.
And the turnaround is monthly then, right? Okay, I was just wondering what the lag was.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution M is to authorize the chairman to sign a letter of agreement for autopsy and morgue services with Glens Falls Hospital in future years, subject to appropriations thereof. So this is a couple years now that Dr. Sikorica has been working out of, Glens Falls Hospital for some of more of the run-of-the-mill autopsies that have to be performed. This saves us a considerable amount of money as opposed to, transporting, bodies
same,
Yeah.
Chris?
So moved.
Moved by Dave, second. Don Ward, James Griffith, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Carried.
Okay, so resolution N is, a lengthy budget amendment. The idea behind this budget amendment is to codify and kind of illustrate some of the cost-saving measures that have been put into place by department heads since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. I will highlight some of the larger ones for you, and please feel free to answer any questions or ask any questions if you have. The first thing I'd like to point out in the decrease in appropriations, which is your top table, in the middle, you will see a bunch of accounts that are DSS. Okay, they all start with A6010, which is the DSS admin department. All of those expenses have state and federal aid against them. So the number that you see there in the right column is net of the revenue. So if I look at the regular earnings, where it's $47,500, the real decrease in the .1 is $190,000 plus. But rather than teasing out which percentage is state and which percentage is federal and decreasing those revenues, what I tried to do for clarity's sake is to only decrease the appropriation by the net. Because that's always the problem with DSS, is you decrease a cost by $200,000, you really only save $50,000. So what we're doing is we're just recognizing the savings of that $50,000 of local share and kind of leaving the revenue. So it's done for clarity's sake. I just wanted to point out that revenue against those DSS accounts has already been taken into account in those numbers.
So the cut in DSS programs and services is actually a factor of probably 3 beyond that, right?
Yes.
The actual impact of their program.
Probably.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the large ones that are in here, you'll see some sheriffs, .1. That's largely reflective of just the shutdown. Right, when the courts were shut down, we weren't using part-time deputies to transport inmates to local courts. That was a very large savings to us. Those kind of things. Corrections was in a similar vein. We weren't taking new prisoners for most of that. So if you come down to the line that says Medicaid hyphen program expenses, that's 100% county money. That is our weekly share. So our annual Medicaid bill is a little over $11 million. In the very first COVID stimulus bill way back in February or March, eons ago, there was what we call EFMAP, or Enhanced Federal Medicaid Assistance Program, money that was divvied out to each county in New York. We're one of only 2 states where the county actually pays for Medicaid, so we started on that. The governor held that money as long as he possibly could. We finally beat him up enough that he let it go, and what the result was our weekly share went down. So we were supposed to get cash, and he didn't do that, but he reduced our weekly share. The $680,886 is the remaining, that from when he reduced our payment till the end of the year. What we've been told is to expect that decreased payment to go through most of next year as well. So there's a significant Medicaid savings to be realized there. The next big one you'll see is a $1.442 million reduction in the general fund transfer to county roads. That is a result of several things. The first being that CHIPS was funded flat in the budget, and we received extreme winter recovery and Pave New York funds, which we were not expecting. We did not include those in the adopted 2020 budget. Then there was subsequent action taken by the Board and Public Works Committee, where you worked with the superintendent and told her to only pave up to 80% of those 3 funding streams combined. Then she also decided to not do one bridge project that she had scheduled. So it was, $1.1 million reduction in local costs for paving and about a $300,000 savings in bridge projects that were planned that were not executed. So that interfund transfer, which was originally $10.6-ish million from general fund to county road, goes down by $1.442 million. Now these next 3 lines are interfund transfers that are going down. I was again trying for clarity in this resolution because it's already a little busy. So I only wanted to talk about general funds today. The illustrious treasurer has brought to my attention that, violates accounting standards. I will insert the corresponding revenue reductions in the small funds for the version of the resolution that goes out in your packet. I kind of just wanted to talk about general fund today, but the accounting gods want me to take into account what it does to the small funds, so I will. But just as a heads up. So what you'll see is if I decrease the interfund transfer from general fund by 1.442 million, that knocks the revenue down in county road by 1.442 million as well. So there'll be some other moving parts that you'll see in the final resolution. We did away with the transfer to the capital project of the interest in 66,000. We had another 100,000 that was kind of earmarked to go to road machinery that I don't think we need. We took that out. And then you'll see, Al alluded to this earlier in the meeting, the MS fund is quite strong. One of the reasons that we switched carriers this year in June was that, as Al and Melissa can attest to, I had a number of what we might call uncomfortable meetings with our former health insurance carrier, where I told them that their numbers were not accurate and that they were claiming our annual claims number was 8 million, and I kept hammering them that no, our annual claims number is 5.5 million. They wouldn't believe us because their admin cut is a percentage of your total claim number, and they didn't think we would switch carriers. We did, and lo and behold, the new carrier gave us the claim number of 5.5 million. So that's where that $617,000 in savings is, because we finally got a carrier that was willing to actually give us what our claim number is. And there will be some savings in health insurance moving forward from that. We're going to, have a more realistic claim number. And then we will have that same discussion that we did with Humana, which is our Humana renewal was a 14% decrease because the utilization during the shutdown was so low. We've seen the same thing with our employee and retiree under 65 health insurance plan, which is the Blue Cross plan, in that you really couldn't go to the doctor for a couple months. So there's a short-term savings there. We all need to be aware that, A, that's short-term, and it's artificial because doctors were closed, and that if that was routine preventative care, there's a potential that there will be a large downstream cost to something that got missed in those preventative care. But what we'll do is we'll recognize and take advantage of the savings while we have it, while still planning that there may be, there will be an increase down the road, and there could even be a significant increase if things got missed that should have been caught. But best we can do is plan with what we have. And then the retiree under 65 is the Humana breakage that we got. So total right there is $3.538 million in savings in general fund. Now, Mr. Shaw was asking about some of these things earlier. We have some revenue reductions to talk about as well. So the next is decreased revenue. So I'm going to skip over the appropriated fund balance for now. We'll go back to that at the end. All of these county clerk fees fall into that same category as the mortgage tax. It's very difficult to see where we're going to end in the end of the year. We missed 2 months of revenue, but I don't really believe that every cent we didn't realize in those 2 months went away. There was still demand for those services. Now, some of it probably went online, right? The ones that could, DMV specifically, you can't really file stuff with the county clerk with the state, but the stuff that you can do online with DMV might have gone there, we might have lost that, but there is still a pent-up demand. We're seeing it daily. The county clerk is extremely busy, still processing all sorts of stuff. So I think some of that revenue is going to come back. But with that, we are decreasing the anticipated revenue from auto use tax by $30,000, clerk fees overall by $75,000, mortgage tax by $130,000, as per our discussion earlier. The I Love New York funding, I decreased it $45,000 in this resolution, and then I just found out late yesterday that we are actually going to get another $25,000 than I thought. So actually, that number is more like $20,000 reduction in I Love New York, not 45. So, and I'll talk about a couple others. As was mentioned earlier, as of right now, I zeroed out the tax auction revenue. We're not going to do it this year. We had budgeted $250,000. We won't get anything. So that's a decrease of $250,000. Sales tax, Al and I are both very close to each other in the independent projections that we're doing. We both think we're going to come in right around $21 million. So that's interest revenue has fallen off a cliff. So we're gonna miss that budget by around $100,000, maybe a little bit more. And, the Rivers Casino distribution, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with that. So we had a very strong first quarter. We were actually gonna be above budget for, the Rivers distribution if that had held through. And then the casino's been closed for 6 months. So we completely missed all revenue for 2 quarters. And now they just reopened yesterday. So I don't know if there's pent-up demand and people are gonna be gambling like crazy now that they can, or if the fact that they had to, close every other slot machine and they can't do table games, and that is gonna really, hurt the handle of the casino, and even though they're open, we're gonna get diminished revenue, so that's a very hard one to forecast right now. But right now, we're at 95,000 in revenue from the casino, and we had 400 budgeted. So with this number, I'm trying to be conservative in saying that for the rest of the year, we'll only get 60,000. If they have a banner quarter, because there's all sorts of pent-up gambling demand, then we'll be over that, or we could be under it. It's very hard for me, at least, to say where we're gonna be. So then the final line, all those revenues got decreased, and then, again, those accounting rules, you gotta balance it, right? So what we did was we just decreased the appropriated fund balance by as much as we could to balance these cost reductions. And so by decreasing it 2.3 million, we're down to about $1 million, in appropriated fund balance, which is kind of what Al's been talking to you all about, is that we may end up, worst case scenario, spending about $1 million of the surplus that was appropriated, so. Are there questions that I can try to answer on the budget amendment?
Matt Hicks?
Yeah, this is kind of out of bounds, I'll probably get dope slapped for asking it, but, so we're not gonna have any auction revenue for this year. I believe that in the past, we have set aside X amount of dollars for cleanup costs that we've turned into a fund. Can we access revenue out of that fund as a one-time shot to make up for the situation for this year? Or is that dedicated and restricted?
So it's reserved, and Al can correct me if I'm wrong, but anything that the board reserveth, the board can take it away. However, at this point, given the report that Al just gave you, and the numbers that I see so far for the 2021 budget, I wouldn't recommend doing that at this point. I think we've been conservative enough, we've done enough cost savings that I don't know that we need to start rating our reserves yet.
Al, do we know how much is in there?
It's over 300, I wanna say 360 off the top of my head.
Okay.
So if we go a couple,
Cautious and wait, that's fine.
so yeah, if we win a couple auctions, in a couple of years, we're gonna miss auctions, it might be something we do.
So I think you could, my suggestion at this point would be not yet.
Or we could potentially, if we budget and have an auction next year, is then realize 100% of the revenue next year and not put any more into reserve as an option.
Yep.
Okay.
And also would be an option would be, if we do wait, maybe do some work on some of these properties so they do bring more. That might end up being an option too, according, if they go a couple extra years with no maintenance at all, and some of them will. So my emphasis on this that I wanted to say was all the department heads worked hard in saving money from day one. Didn't matter who was here, what seat they were in. They did that on their own. And this is to give credence to all of them for their savings. This isn't a slap at anybody that we're taking money away from your budget. That's not it. This is to give them credit for what they've done, what they've accomplished, and what it's done for our county. And I want to make sure that they know that we all appreciate that. And going forward, the amended budget line, when we do our budgets, has never meant anything. This year, it might mean a little something. This gives a little credence to where we were actually at budget-wise, because this turned out to be our budget for this year in a roundabout way, is going to be the amended budget number, and we'll have something to work off other than our projections. But our projections, as we get closer, should be even more accurate than the amended budget, because these .1s are going to have to come back unless people are missing or you don't need to replace them. The .1 money is going to come back. But most of these things that are out, and they'll be out in next year's budget, except for .1s. So that's kind of the groundwork as to how we got here, is to give credit to the department heads and give us something to work off towards next year. So, Dan, did you have a question? I thought you had your hand up.
Well, just back to Matt's statement about the reserve we have for, property that, for possible cleanup. And Roger's comment earlier about when the piece of property that we've approved to sell, we still have a, what's it called, chain of responsibility or?
Still a chain of titles, which means that.
Does that mean that that money from that fund could be used if we were forced to clean something up in any kind of an
We can move anything.
after we sell one of these pieces of property? Is that also meant to be used for that? Let's say that they got in trouble and they come to us because we were part of that chain of responsibility. Could we use part of that fund for that?
I would think that's where you'd look first.
Right.
Yeah, it's not what it's meant for, but that's,
So I guess getting back to, Matt's original question and your comment, I don't think we should ever reduce that to, for the sake of general fund balancing, is that we need some protection there in case that ever occurs, since we are taking chances. And unless you reduce the liability of any of this, we need a reserve for that. That's just caution. I'm not disagreeing with what anybody said.
no matter what the situation, you don't mind taxing to build that fund higher.
I didn't say build it higher. I'm saying spend.
That's what we were talking about.
Well, no, he was talking about balancing if we could use some of it.
We were saying we could take the money away from putting it in the budget to keep growing it. Was also part of the discussion.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that under certain situations, we might not want to tax for that.
But that's not what I heard Matt say.
We're talking around. I was just looking at 30,000 feet to say, what's in
Right.
there? What's it available for? Do we want to consider using it? And Chris' recommendation is no, not at this time, because you think the waters are calming a little bit, so I'm fine moving forward with that.
Okay. So that's the two discussions. I mean, because we do tax to fund that. So I just wanted to make sure that I knew where you were coming from. Okay, we need, Jay Skelly.
Yeah, I've got a question for Chris and Al. Al touched on briefly, and we talked about last meeting. We've been floating DSS out of our general fund, probably to the tune about $2.5 to $2.75 million now. And we think we're gonna start getting some of that money back, but the rumor was they might still withhold 20%. So that's about $750,000 we're gonna be shortfall at the end of the year. And if they hold back, okay, go ahead, Chris, you got the answer.
Yeah, there's a new rumor. I'll let Chris take care of it.
So that was some of the good news that we started to get from the state, in the last probably 5 days. We got notice that we were gonna get reimbursed for Q2 expenditures under I Love New York. The DSS claims, some of it federal money, a little bit of it state money, started to flow. And then the folks down in the finance division of DSS spoke to their reps at OTDA and were told, yeah, we don't know when we're gonna give you the 20%, but we're gonna give it to you. And then OTDA started reaching out to me and my counterparts and asking us how we were booking it. And I think what they were trying to figure out was when they had to pay us, when it was gonna be an issue. And Al and I are in lockstep on this one. We continue to book the entire receivable, so that if the state doesn't pay us, we can print you out a neat little report that says this is how much the state shafted us by. But I think that's a good sign that OTDA wanted to know how we were booking it, in that they are planning on paying us that 20%. So, we don't have anything in stone yet, but, all of the signs from our state funding sources at this point are starting to look more positive.
Yeah, and Jay, that's what my question to Al earlier was, how could the money be there if it was missing? And he said, no, it's not missing, I'm still recording it. So that's kind of where that question came from. I thought maybe he was gonna, put it out there to make sure we knew how much they were taking away from us.
And I was just concerned about the 20% adds up pretty fast with that large of a value. And if they were gonna continue that on to the next year, we'd have to be planning that into the budget too.
So we're getting conflicting rumors, and hopefully the last rumor is the best one.
That'd be great.
I think that's where we're at.
I've been hearing from different town, highways that they're getting full 100% reimbursement on their chips, their winter recovery and their paved New York. Now, if the towns are getting paid in full, is the county can be treated differently? Is that, I know we're being very cautious and holding back 20% because of old rumors. Now you're hearing new rumors. Do you have any new rumor on that part of it? And can they treat the county differently than towns?
So I don't have any new information on chips. There hasn't been anything that's come across my desk as far as any kind of, firm statement that we think the rest of the chips is coming. Can they treat the county differently? Yes, they often do, but they don't usually when it comes to chips and paved New York and extreme winter. So, if that's the case, Deb can reach out to her association, I can reach out to my colleagues, and we can start to see, what others are hearing and thinking, and then we can try to adjust accordingly. But to date, I've not heard anything formal that they are releasing 100% of chips.
Right, the 20% is still in play. It's not saying they don't give it, correct, just take it back.
Yeah. Dan, who's funded fully right now?
I contacted, Mr. Graham from Kingsbury, and he said that they have been fully funded for all three.
Okay.
All three, okay, yeah.
All three programs,
Yep.
funding's paid in full. And so if they do one town in Washington County, I'm pretty confident. We have ours in, and I'm expecting full payment shortly.
Yeah, we did the same, Dan, but I haven't heard of anybody actually being paid.
Right, so that's why when I heard that, it kind of excited me.
We all applied in full, but I didn't hear anybody got paid in full.
My concern on,
Kingsbury got paid in full.
Is that true?
They said it's in the coffer.
well,
It's bank.
according to if it was all done, yeah, are they done paving?
Kingsbury,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're all done too.
See, we've got our last bill in, but I don't know if it's gonna get paid because the deadline is, what, December now? You had to have it in by September to get paid in December.
Right.
So there's still a lag waiting to know whether you actually get paid or not.
But if some have already in the county, that's what I'm thinking, we all should.
But
Brian's point is, they may come back next February and say, we shouldn't have done that. We're gonna claw back 20% this year on you, because, is that something that they might do, Chris? I mean.
Oh, yeah. They can do it on Chris Creek.
Yeah, exactly.
well, that's my concern is their state year ends in March 31st. So they could take money, but they said, because that's how their budget, they said in their budget, they could take 20%. So they could take their 20%, they could do it in February, and if they pass the budget the same way again next year, they could do it to us again in May, and you could lose 40%.
I question the legality of that for chips. I can see it out of the other two, but not for chips.
And why?
Because it's a law, so how would you circumvent that law for chips?
They notified you, they might reduce 20%,
I know.
and they're putting another.
I think we're all
They voted on it in the
prophesizing.
budget.
Oh, yes. We definitely are.
And there's no answer to this.
Correct.
I don't want to tie the
Yeah.
either up. I was just hoping that maybe.
Just don't be surprised if they take 20, and they may just take 20% of your chips next year and say, here's your new number. They may just do it that way. We don't know. But it's a good question because we're all in limbo on it and have no idea where it's going. Okay, we need to vote on this amendment. Resolution.
On that or not? I don't think we had a motion, did we?
Do we have a motion? No?
Do you want to, no motion, but, Chris has further changes to it, so do you want to?
Yeah, so I mentioned it briefly, but so there will be, in the version that goes out to you in the packet, there will be then more sections.
Oh, the small fund.
The small fund. So there's three of them up here in the top part in the 9,000 department, county road, road machinery, and capital projects.
The 399s.
The decreases in the transfers you see there, respectively, the 1.442 million, 100,000, 66,413. There will be corresponding decreases to revenue and appropriations in each of those small funds. again, I was trying to keep things a little bit clean. Al wants me to play by the rules, I don't know, whatever. So we'll tidy that up before it goes out again.
So we still need to move it to the full board
What I'm saying is you're moving it with the proposed changes?
with the proposed changes.
Right, that's all.
Okay. Moved by Dave. Do I have a second? Matt Hicks. Got Don Ward. Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay. That wraps up my regularly scheduled program.
Buildings and grounds?
Yeah, I can do that now. Good call. Okay, so, buildings and grounds, annually, they have a small budget that covers food for their safety days. They have a separate safety days that the safety officer puts on for them. The superintendent emailed me this morning and said that usually he forgets to come and ask for permission because you need a special waiver to buy food from the board. But this year he thought of it in time. So I have a quote here from Ginny Ray's for a total of, $513.60 for the food for their safety days for both of their crews. So it's already budgeted. What the superintendent would be looking for would be approval from the finance committee to go ahead and spend that money on.
So moved.
Moved by Dave, second. Lester. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay. So the 2020 budget update. Anything more than we've been through already? We've covered a lot of it.
We've talked about a lot of it. One of the difficult things is, as we were just talking about with CHIPS, is revenue, right? We don't know what the state's gonna do. And largely at this point, what the state does may be influenced by what the feds do or don't do. And as of now, I don't think we can count on the feds to do anything. So, I think the departments have been really good. I spent the last few days going through all the departmental submissions. The budgets look very conservative. We don't really have much in the way, if anything, of personnel requests, and the department heads have really done their best to try to control costs. As Al and I work together and forecast revenues, you know, we're thinking sales tax, maybe we use 21 million for next year, because we think that's where we're gonna head this year. Again, though, mortgage tax, casino revenue, OTB is a small amount, but it's a big question mark that I've spent a lot of time on. I don't know where OTB is. The receipts were way down, but then the handle of Saratoga was huge this year. And I don't know if that was flowing through Naira Vets or OTB. And the deposits are behind. So those things are very difficult for us to forecast. But in general, general fund, which is what I've had a chance to dive into at this point, looks like costs are, you know, pretty well controlled, and the revenue is the big question.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at. It's just, now it's just trying to make the projections of where we're gonna come in. We're kind of gonna go with what we expect, what we've seen in the past, and use that going forward. But if we pass the budget in sometime in November and we have information from the feds or something from November through January, I would suggest we stay at the table and get all the amendments ready for January 2nd.
Yeah.
Because we would need to get things in place as soon as possible, but you can't amend the just passed budget. But I don't think there's any reason to hold the budget up.
No, and some of my colleagues who have a little bit more flexibility because they're charter counties and stuff, they're delaying their budget process, and the budget officer and I have talked about that. Just given what we know, which isn't a lot at this point, I'm not sure delaying gets us anything, right? I don't think we're really gonna have much certainty by the time we've gotta have things done anyway. And so what Brian and I have talked a lot about is trying to budget what we know to the best we know it. And then the unknowns, if we talk about state revenue, maybe, just keep state revenue flat until we're told differently. And if we adopt a budget and things change, we just work like heck between when the budget's adopted until January 2nd to come up with contingency plans with input from all of you. And then we can hit the ground running with January 2nd with an This is a really challenging year with a number of unknowns. It is what it is, I guess.
And as we get ready for our budget meetings, we really need people in-house. There's gonna be too much paperwork, too much information to put this out over Zoom and not be able to see everybody with their hands up and asking questions, and it's just a lot better in person. We're gonna try to make that happen, whether we have to use a classroom downstairs, Chris suggested, or something like that to get more distance and more room, or if we do it up here, whatever we have to do. But I think we're gonna have to try to be in person and so we can do a better job. And we're gonna start probably with government ops. Dave sent me a text, I guess yesterday, and thought we were gonna start with government ops on the 22nd of doing some of our budget work within each department and seeing how that flows through. And if things get tougher, we'll have special meetings and whatever it takes. But we know everybody's enjoying Zoom and not coming in, but we're gonna have to come together here at some point and go through all this. It's the only fair way to everybody get all the same information and knowledge. And other words, you send it all out, and how many people read it and get the same thing from what they actually just read? I guess that's the other thing. Whereas in a committee, people bring up different questions and you get answers and you kind of figure it all out. So I would assume that everyone feels a little bit that way, and I'd appreciate it if we can find a way to get everybody in here at some point. Okay, next, we have the waive permit fees for the August 24th storm in Whitehall. That's one of the last things on my agenda here. We didn't have a resolution in the packet for that,
No, we did not.
so that's, must be why it's here.
So as a recap, we talked about this in public safety. The request came from the code enforcement administrator. I believe at the time, he was well over 100, I think he was in the 130 range of structures that he and his staff had to inspect in the wake of the August 24th freak heavy rain event in the village of Whitehall. And the discussion of public safety was all of those buildings and maybe some others that hadn't been inspected at that time are going to require building permits to remedy the damage that was caused by the storm. And those permits could range from 50 to some number higher than that, dollars per permit. And so the discussion of public safety was, is the Board of Supervisors willing to waive the permit fees for those? Now, we did talk about some parameters, and so at least off the top of my head, how I remember them, is that we talked about permit applications having to be submitted by September 30th, and that it has to be confined to repairs, the damage caused by the storm that occurred in August 24th in the village of Whitehall. John was thinking, like I said, maybe let's say 150 permits at $50 a piece. You're talking $7,500 in revenue, as a minimum that we would be foregoing. But I know some of the points that were made by the other supervisors was that, you know, it was a very big hit to the Whitehall community, and to then make residents pay to fix the damage, you know, didn't seem quite right, so they wanted to try to provide some relief. And there were some questions raised about other situations that had happened and whether permits had been waived or not. One thing that is a little bit unique in this is that because this was such a strange and isolated event, there is no FEMA or CEMO assistance with this one. For us to qualify for FEMA, there has to be $30 million in damage to public infrastructure, so none of the homes or businesses count. And while the school was heavily damaged, it did raise to the level of $30 million, and there weren't really bridges washed out or large sections of road washed out, so we're not going to meet those thresholds. I think public safety has worked really diligently. They've gotten creative. They've got the Small Business Administration working up there to try to get an SBA disaster declaration and loan fund established. I know they're finalizing the paperwork on that. But that was one of the things that was mentioned in public safety as this being a somewhat different event, is that there is no state or federal assistance coming for this, and this is something that the Board of Supervisors could do to try to help. And so I believe the recommendation
Okay, and John wants to weigh in here. Go ahead, John.
I'm just going to say that it was only about a little over 100 properties, and a bunch of those so far aren't going to actually require permits, so the number might be a little bit lower. So
Might be closer to half of what we were saying. Okay. Now, Dave O'Brien.
I'd like to move it for discussion.
Dave's going to move it for discussions or second. Matt Hicks. Okay, discussion. Is there anybody who wants to say something here? John Rozelle, you want to speak up for Whitehall? Let's get us started here. Maybe
Oh, I know there's two businesses that are condemned right on Broadway, and we can't afford to lose any more businesses. And, you know, if it's $50 a permit, even $50 would help in a situation like that to bring stuff back. I've got to say that, you know, I think the village really needs the help.
Okay. Dave O'Brien?
So, in taking this through, I mean, this is almost a one-of-a-kind disaster. It's located in one village, and normally we get FEMA or other aid from disasters, but not this time. I think that this is gonna have to be every circumstance evaluation about how the impact is and what the impact is. I for one think that we should at least reach out to help those people, and this is something completely under control. It's not something they want to do to their homes, to fix their homes or businesses, so I think we should step forward and help them out.
Any more discussion? Dan Shaw.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a contrarian on this, although I respect John and what he's doing, and I know that it's been very tough in Whitehall. But I'm just concerned about our role and how we determine when we do something. How do you, if you have, we set an example, let's say, or a precedent is what we're doing here. And $3,500 is a small amount of money, so it's almost insignificant to be debating this over any period of time. But if you're going to do this, wouldn't it be better to set a policy so that it became fair to everybody? I remember, it was just, a few weeks ago, the tornado touched down White Creek. Well, and I think it even hit part of Cambridge. And I know 15, 20 years ago, it hit the southern end of Washington County, a tornado. And it took the roofs right off of it was just over our line in Wiley Brothers. People might know that lumber company down there. But that went through every place, from Cambridge, White Creek. If we start this, then we have to have a policy to determine how you do it. So it isn't just how you feel and what the Board of Supervisors feel that day. And I'd rather it be a policy. If you want to adopt a policy, fine, to do it. Other than that, I think we're going down a slippery slope on how you administer this and how do you do it next time. And now, is there any insurance any of these people have? And if they have insurance, if there's a handful have insurance, you have to weed them out because the insurance is going to pay for it.
I know in anecdotally talking to both Tim and John, very few, if any, of the affected property owners have insurance. Because it's a flood, and none of these people are in flood zone. This isn't the part of Whitehall down, kind of that triangle between South Bay and the canal, always floods, so those folks have flood insurance. This is high and dry up on Broadway, so those folks have never flooded, probably may never will, hopefully. So to answer that particular question, no, it doesn't appear that any of these folks, or very few of these folks, have flood insurance. Mr. Shaw raises a good point. I don't disagree with the sentiment, and I had this conversation with the chairman. A potential compromise to throw out would be, it seems to be that there's consensus that this was a brief, one-of-a-kind incident in Whitehall, and there is a desire on behalf of the Board of Supervisors to do something to help the community. So maybe the board could move forward and waive the fees for this. I don't don't disagree, Mr. Shaw, that perhaps we should then have a conversation in subsequent committees, public safety, about adopting some kind of a uniform, permit waiver criteria, that if a certain event matches that criteria, then you don't have to come to the Board of Supervisors for action to get those, fees waived. Maybe you can't define it well enough, and it will ultimately just be, like the famous Larry Flint case, you'll know it when you see it, and we can't really put it down on paper. Or maybe we can develop a good policy. But I'm sensing from the board, there's a desire to do something proactive here to help, so maybe not hold that up if we're going to, try to address what I think Mr. Shaw raises as some pretty valid concerns.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, it's gonna seem very counterintuitive for somebody from Granville to say something positive about Whitehall, but I think we should definitely do that, because part of government's role is to help people. We have an opportunity to help people here, let's do it. As far as the policy is concerned, I'm just waiting for Roger to raise his hand to say, every time we draw a line, there's gonna be a situation that's just over that line. I know, it's been 10 years, but I'm learning from you, Roger, I pick up what you say. I think it'd be very difficult to develop policy, and B, circumstances change globally as the county and in these individual circumstances, and I don't really have a problem taking them one at a time.
Well, and that, and the fact that the way it was just said, that if you have a policy, it doesn't come to the Board of Supervisors, it just happens, there'd be boards that would be really upset at that, so that might be the end of the policy at that point, so that's an interesting thought. I hadn't looked at it quite that way, Dave.
So as far as impact on the county, I mean, will this solve all the issues? No, but at least it gives them one less expense they have to worry about. But if they don't get their properties fixed up, we potentially won't get their taxes paid. We'll have to make the village, the school, and the town whole on their taxes, and the county won't get their taxes. So there is an impact on the county. And the more we help these people leg up, I think it's a benefit to the county to help make sure we do all we can to help get our county taxes paid in, or school and taxes. School, town, and village taxes paid also.
And I also think that, and I talked about this back the first meeting I had here as budget officer, was that we really have to work together more than we have in the past. And this is one of the few things that comes out of the blue where it seems like everybody wants to work together, and I think that's kind of an optimistic stance here, because that's different than we've been in the past, and this is something we can really do to help our neighbors and friends in Whitehall. So, Sue Clary?
John, from what I understand, I talked with Nimer yesterday about flood insurance and how we should really be thinking about our FEMA maps and how that works, and whether or not we should have flood insurance or not have flood insurance. We talked about how much rain fell. I think, was it 5.85 inches of rain fell in 2 hours?
Yeah.
And the school is actually at a higher point. It's not near a water body. And so does that come into the drainage and the soil around the Whitehall School? Did it just all fill up? How did that?
Everything come down, across the road from the school.
Okay.
That flooded over Buckley Road right into the school, plus everything behind the school. There was just so much rain that.
So are the drainage tiles filled up? Is that what, I mean, the soil and the drainage tiles around the school just couldn't hold anymore. It's like trying to pour 2 gallons of milk in a 1 gallon bottle.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Anyways, I totally agree with helping out the village and town of Whitehall. I'm sorry about your municipal building. I know that's just a mess as far as, so if we can help in any way in that way, as far as us coming up and help, I'd be happy to help. So.
Thank you, Sue. And for information, the town building here is in a floodplain.
Okay,
So if I got the cheapest insurance to insure the building
right.
for 200,000, there's a $2,000 deductible and it costs 99,900 something. So you're talking $12,000 a year. If I go up to 300,000, I'm over $17,000 a year. And the village and the town didn't have flood insurance. But, you know, we're basically cleaned up and ready to open the building Monday. Get back, but we just have to, just like any other problem, you have to just deal with it and move on.
Yeah. One question for you, John, is that goes back to, I'm trying to figure this out, the community rating system and how the county is doing like the emergency management. And I may be off base here, but it helps reduce that percentage for flood insurance. Chris, maybe you can help me on that?
Yeah, so what they do is the community rating for fire and for flood, and for the flood, it is, the emergency management plan, that is in place, as well as hazard mitigation efforts and plans that are in place. So, in your community, it's, some of the work that has been done or could be done on the White Creek, to proactively mitigate the impacts of potential floods, has the potential to reduce the community rating, which would therefore trickle down and through the FIRM program, which is the flood insurance rate mapping program from the federal government, would decrease your residents and business owners' flood insurance rates.
Chris, would the same thing help with John and Whitehall at this point? So they could reduce that rate that he's talking about down to maybe 45%? Is that a possibility?
I don't honestly know what amount the rate could be reduced or not. I know we do have the hazard mitigation plan in place.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is difficult in the Whitehall situation as opposed to the Salem situation is that the Salem, it historically floods, right? It happens regularly. We have data. We know what the magnitude is. We know what sort of events precipitated, pun intended. On Whitehall, this was such a freak event. We don't really have any certainty that it might occur again. So that's a much harder situation to try and plan and mitigate for, because it was such a one-off. Whereas Salem, good, bad, or indifferent, is a relatively regular occurrence, and we can model and take action more appropriately because of that.
Thank you. Yes, John.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
We do have through FEMA flood insurance on the playground. That's if the canal comes up. But we didn't get flooded from the canal. It all come from Broadway down behind us. Believe it or not, the canal didn't go over. So nothing adds up right.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, James Griffiths, were you gonna comment?
You're funny,
Okay.
Brian. I'm good. I said it's three into 1 gallon.
I saw that. That's why I didn't know if there's some more you were gonna add. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna go back to code enforcement. We're gonna go back to John Graham, and he had brought up public safety, his need for more people, and he's gonna discuss that now, but I know he did put in his budget scenarios, and he didn't ask for the world there, so we're gonna see where John's at today. Go ahead, John.
Well, most of you saw the presentation that I gave during the Public Safety Committee meeting there. I'm not going to go into it in detail again here, but if you want more information, feel free to reach out to me. My point of that presentation was to give a picture of where things are in code enforcement as far as staffing and where it has been traditionally. And to let you know what we need in order to provide the services that are required by the state. According to my estimations, I figured 3 additional code enforcement officers. One would be for fire inspections, which we're way behind on. And 2 more would be for the building side of things. A suggestion came up during that meeting, possibly using a code enforcement officer or officers from other parts of the county as a part-time and temporary solution to help us until we get another person who is trained. I reached out to 12 of the 14 code compliance officers that the different towns and villages have. Only 5 of them qualify as being CEO. 2 of them are in full-time positions, so I didn't reach out to them. Those are the 2 of the 14 I didn't call. 1 is not interested, and 2, they said possibly depending on the scenario. So I just wanted to give you guys the update on that and be here if you guys have any more questions that I can help with as you discuss it.
John, how about overtime as far as your own people? I mean, could they do some on weekends or after hours?
We are currently using a fair amount of overtime. The last paycheck or pay period, I think one person had 18 hours overtime, another person had 15 hours overtime. I'm putting in extra hours, but being salary, that doesn't count against that, so that's good. But this year, we're probably going to be using up what we had planned for overtime. Traditionally, we've come in under it, so.
How about the people from the outlying towns? Is there an opportunity to use them maybe to just do fire inspections and things like that? Have you looked at that, or? That's
the people that I called. In order to do fire inspections, if they only did fire inspections, they would have to have, it's only half of the training. It's called, you're certified as a BSI, which is a building safety inspector. I asked everybody if they had either that or the full training for a code enforcement officer. Those are the 5 that qualified. So I did reach out to them, and my thought is if we did get somebody part-time on a temporary basis, that would be where they would go, would be doing fire inspections. Because they could kind of do that on their own time, set their own schedule, since they already have other part-time jobs that they're doing. Another option that I thought of just last night is possibly hiring somebody who would be a clerk level instead of a CEO level to do, to make phone calls and set up the scheduling for the code enforcement officer that does them currently. That would take that off of him and allow him to go out and spend more time doing the inspections as opposed to being stuck in the office making phone calls. I reached out to Melissa and she said that it would be about a $5, a little bit more than that, an hour difference to go that route. Just as another option.
So that puts you another person on the road every day?
Doing it which way? Doing it with a CEO or with a clerk?
With a clerk.
With a clerk, that would allow the person we already have trained to be on the road more often.
But how many days a week do you figure that is? They're probably on the road a couple of days now, you're saying?
Well, he's on and off the road each day, but he's got to make the appointments and then go out and do the appointments. So this would allow somebody else to make those appointments in the office, not be, it wouldn't cost as much to do it that way. And then Chris is the guy's name who does the fire inspections. Then Chris could go out, spend more time on the road, just going out and actually accomplishing those inspections. So.
And that's more than you can ask your person that's there already to do, that you figured there? You already have a clerk there. The clerk can't make calls now. Is that just too much on their plate at that point? Is that what you're referring?
She is buried with work as it is, so, yeah. I mean,
Okay,
she could
John
make some
Ward.
calls, she could make some calls here and there, but it wouldn't be as much of a help if we had a part-time person doing solely that. So.
Okay, Don Ward?
Yeah, that was my thought. I know a place in Saratoga, and they have a part-time person that does the scheduling at 20 hours a week or less. So a part-time position would probably work to do the scheduling.
And that's just for fire? Is that what you're referring to, John?
Yes, because the person I know who actually does it said it's really tough to schedule in, and what the chief tells him is, here's the times that are open. We don't care who you schedule, fill it all up for so we can get out and inspect. So it takes a lot of time to fill a schedule.
Okay.
What was presented during the Public Safety Committee was I wanted to get another full-time person for fire inspections. So this part-time scheduler wouldn't be a replacement for that. It would help us until that person is up to 100% in their training. And then we would discuss at that point if we still keep that person on for scheduling.
Okay, John, to go on to the training part, is that something that can be done online, that they can start immediately since everything's remote, or do they have to wait till next April before they can even start to train? How's this work?
It is only done online currently. I believe the next round starts in October. It's completely different than what they've done before because of COVID. So I don't, they know yet how often it's going to be offered. So
that's our benefit that it starts in October then?
Pardon me?
That's our benefit that it starts in October then?
As long as we get somebody in that quick, yes.
Okay. So does anyone want to make a resolution on how we go forward with this?
So,
I will.
I guess the question is, what are the costs involved, and how are you gonna cover those costs? And I guess I want to reiterate, here we are in budget season, and like we said today, we're not sure how everything is gonna impact on the budget, and how many people you want to add when we may be considering impacting other people in this process that are currently employed.
I think right now, with Cambridge coming on board, he probably does need one new person. Now, as far as having a clerk do scheduling, that's a different story. That might just be part-time for a while or whatever till they get caught up. But I do think they probably need one person as the area gets larger. The problem is, in order for them to hit the ground running in April, when things pick up next spring, they have to be trained, and that's going to take all the while between October and April probably to get the person trained, from what John's been telling us. So that's the position I would take. I would hire one and get moving. And yeah, it is going to cost us money. It always does cost us money. But the more that end up under the county control of code enforcement, it will cost more. But there should be more revenue. But the bigger thing is compliance. That's what you're after here.
I don't know if this is for John or Chris, or maybe you're aware of it. Every year around this time, we always discuss what is the shortfall for code enforcement that's made up in taxes. I know it was around 200,000, but we've added people. And what?
You want the net cost that you did away with.
But we always do that. And the reason I'm saying that is that we have discussed before what our options are. One was raising our permit fees to offset the cost. The other one time that was seriously discussed was opting out of it, because this is a service that's not required. The state requires it, and the state could do it. And this is the time that if we're going to start talking hiring people before the budget and before next year, then this dialogue needs to be now too. Otherwise, I'd say let it go through the budget process, and it'll all be hashed out then. So I'm raising the question, Chris, I'm sorry though.
No, so I don't have my budget in front of me, I can go get it, I don't have that number in front of me.
John Graham?
From my understanding on it, and I might be wrong, but from my understanding through the training, the county is responsible for doing it if the towns and villages opt out. I do not know that that's an option for the county to completely opt out. My understanding is the state would step in, make sure things are corrected, running smoothly, and give it back to the county, but I'm not positive. Chris, you might have an answer on that, but also the number of people that the state have to do this job would grind everything to a halt in this county if we give it to the state. I mean, they have, like, last I heard, single digit inspectors for whoever needs it in the state. So it would not be a good thing for the people of the county to hand it over to the state.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's like this year, we just announced, I think it was last finance meeting, our growth, the first time since the 2% cap has been in, the growth is zero, which means we've lost more in assessment than we actually gained throughout the county, even though it was basically one town. Because every other town had growth. So my point is, if you slow down all these people getting their permits, if you put off $2 million of growth this year, that also does away with your opportunity to have growth for a percentage when you do your budget even. This year, we're stuck with zero no matter what. Next year, who knows? Nonetheless.
Net cost of code enforcement is about $379,000.
$379,000. You got your answer.
For this year. And if you add more people, that'll increase, correct?
What's according to how much revenue you had?
Well, if you add the revenue of Cambridge, I don't think it'll cost of the added employees. So it's gonna increase just from added employees because you're growing.
And I think Bob talked about some other revenues that we were gonna look at last meeting.
Yeah.
And collectively, it could offset it, but I don't know. I have no idea. Go ahead, Dave.
Don Ward had his hand up first.
Go ahead, Don.
I was just gonna say that, like in the last, did you say Don Ward?
Yeah.
Sorry, Don. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, you have one, this would be, you could get one backfill and one new person trained in October.
You're asking me that one? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm having problems with my computer. It's cutting in and out, so. Yes, I have one person, we've already gotten approval to backfill that. And then I would like to hire a second person at the same time while I'm going through the interviewing process.
Okay, so that would be 2 on board and hopefully train for next season.
Correct. One net gain, yes.
Right, one net
Right.
gain.
The one's a backfill for retirement.
Right.
Sue Clary.
Is there enough room in your offices for 2 more people?
There is not, but there are plans for us to be moving over to Burgoyne, last I heard. So that would just be stepped up time frame.
Okay.
Well, there's another option too, if that weren't to pan out, where we could fit 2 more people in there. It would involve moving all of our files into a room across the hall that Cornell Cooperative said that they would be willing to do that for us. So.
Thank you.
My question is, we talked about fees for fire insurance. Are we gonna look at, for fire inspections, we're gonna look at that at least the next public safety meeting?
That's fine with me, yep. That would be a whole procedure that would have to be set up, but yeah.
Max.
I'll make a motion, we put one more CEO in the staffing center.
Is there a second? Seconded by Don Ward, Dave O'Brien, Sue Clary. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
I didn't want to affect the vote, but what would that cost be? What's the actual cost?
$65,000, I recall.
Well, with bennies and everything, is that how much?
$65,000.
65,000, okay.
And that,
Starting salary is 43,000.
and it did pass, so everyone knows.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, John.
Hey,
Go ahead, Dan.
I talked to John last week, and while he's on the line, I wanted to bring it up. In our town, we charge building permits to solar farms and to any cell towers and cell tower upgrades. John said that the county doesn't, and that's a large revenue. We had a 7 megawatt project that they just paid a $17,000 permit fee. And we had a cell tower upgrade that we charged only a $500 permit fee, but the fact that with that fee, or with that permit, it gets recorded to the assessor that gets on the record for assessments. Now, if John says that they're not allowed to do it, I suggested that the county pass a resolution that allows us to have permit fees. There's no inspections or anything on these solar farms that the county oversees. And that, to me, is a little concerning, number one. But number two, the revenue stream that you're missing off this would go a long ways towards making up the difference in the spread between revenue and expenses.
John,
I just wanted to bring that up. Maybe John wants to talk about that.
He does.
I didn't want to do it after he left.
He's ready. Go ahead, John.
The state handed down paperwork to us saying that we have no jurisdiction over solar farms or cell towers. What that means is we cannot do inspections on those. It is not, unless it's part of a building itself, okay? So solar farms and cell towers, according to the state, we cannot do anything on those. If we wanted to do it at the county level, that would have to be passed up to the state for their approval, because that would be more restrictive. Rules and as far as code enforcement are concerned, anything that's more restrictive has to be approved by the state. As far as fees for it, I mean, we can't really give them a permit because there's nothing we can do to look at it. But as far as fees, that would be something, you know, that you guys would know more about how that could be instituted. But as far as us going out and looking at them, there's nothing we can do unless the state approves whatever you guys come up with for a resolution on that,
Yeah, what's the permit for, I guess, is that what you're saying?
basically.
Did you want to respond
Well, I
to that?
wonder if the towns are available to do that, if they're supposed to be doing that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering right now
We
too.
can do it. How can they do it?
So what's your permit fee for? What's the permit for?
For the construction of the solar farm. And then
We're
you
not
have,
allowed to do
who's doing the inspections on the concrete when they pour the pads for the transformers and all the different paraphernalia that goes on these sites?
I agree with Dan.
That are being erected for safety issues.
John agrees, you just saying the state told me can't.
Well, and I'm not disagreeing with John. What I'm saying, if that should be researched, and if the county has to pass some local law, I think we should do it and not miss that revenue stream. And make sure and have the proper oversight that the public is being protected by whatever is going on in there.
Yeah, I find it interesting that if somebody builds a cell tower, the base that you would have for the reinforcement, the concrete and all of that, we have no say on that. But if they want to build a shed on that property that's over 144 square feet, they need our permission and our permit. So it doesn't make sense to me either, but that's what's been handed down. Like I said, if you guys want to pass a resolution and hand it up to them for approval, you just let me know what the answer is and we'll do what's determined. But
John, can you get that letter, the rulings or whatnot from the state that tells you that?
absolutely.
Yeah, can we, put that on public safety's agenda, maybe at the next, public safety meeting, because that's really worth looking at. I kinda like the idea of looking at that too. Giving you another job, Don.
Thank you, Brian.
You're very welcome. That's what friends are for. Okay. So, all in favor, say aye. We went there, we passed that. I guess we're done with that part. Anything else to come before finance? Any other business? Go ahead, Sam.
I just have, one question to Roger. Roger, can we go back to, resolution C? I just want to confirm that there is no conflict of interest with the chairman of the board signing for something that directly benefits his town?
Well, I can sign it, Sam.
Well, the benefits are
Benefits your town too.
Well, he can sign my sign, I'll sign his.
There you go.
Isn't that how politics works?
Right, naturally, there's nothing wrong with that.
You're being directed to sign it as the chairman by the board.
Okay.
So it's not an individual or a town decision when you're.
All right.
I brought it up just so no one else would question it.
Well, that's a good point, but I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was.
So I had you answer it and I had Christie answer it, but I didn't have the attorney answer it, so I just wanted to.
Well, everybody.
Boy,
Mr. DeVault was going.
sounds like we're all going down in flames. Sorry, Sam.
The case Mr. DeVault mentioned about, I don't know, I know it when I see it, is actually older than he is. It's from 1964. It's not got
Okay, thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Look forward to budget meetings. Look forward to seeing everyone in here and motion to adjourn.
Okay, and you've got personnel. Yeah, great.
Right. Don't let anybody leave, but you need to
Right.
adjourn.
I need to adjourn, and we're now gonna have
We're running
personnel.
concurrently?
Oh, we are running concurrently. Did you call it to order?
Not to you adjourn.
Oh, okay. So, I'll switch seats with you?
Stay there.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Is that okay, Debbie?
Yes, that's.
So if personnel can now open because finance adjourned?
Mhm.
Okay. So Melissa, we have one issue on the agenda. Is that right?
Yes.
And it's a change in the staffing pattern by adding one new code enforcement officer to that, department, correct? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to make that change in the staffing pattern. Motion by Don, seconded by, you on personnel, Lester?
No.
No.
Jay Skelly.
Jay Skelly, okay, that's the second. Okay, now we have discussion. Okay, no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Melissa, do we have anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, we're adjourned, that's the way to run it.
That's the best personnel meeting ever.
All right, we're done.
All right,
All right, we're all set, Debbie?
we're all set.
Thank
We're
you.
gonna shut it down.